Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us a really thought-provoking collection of material this time.
Yeah, it's all centered around, navigating viruses, health concerns, lots of different perspectives in there.
Exactly. And you mentioned wanting to get a clearer picture, kind of quickly and thoroughly, without feeling overwhelmed.
That's the goal.
Okay. So our mission here is to explore these diverse viewpoints you shared. We'll pull out the core ideas on virus precautions, the whole bacteria and virus question.
Whether they're always something to worry about.
Right, and individual versus community responses, the effects of isolation, and that big debate, vaccines versus natural immunity.
And the sources really do range, don't they? From wellness practices to critiques of global health bodies, even mentions of biowarfare concepts.
It's quite a mix. Okay, let's dive in. Where should we start? Maybe with the basics, the microbes themselves.
Sounds good. A central theme right off the bat is just how, well, ubiquitous these things are. One source uses this great analogy.
The bucket of bacteria and viruses.
That's the one. It paints this picture of our bodies constantly interacting with them. On our skin, inside us.
So it's not like we're under attack constantly. It's more of an ongoing interaction.
Exactly. A dynamic exchange. We're always encountering microbes, shedding them. Our immune systems are responding. Sometimes we notice, like with a fever, sometimes maybe not at all.
Huh. And it happens through everyday contact too, right? Like the source mentioned, kissing, intimacy, exchanging microbes.
Right. Which leads to that question you highlighted. Is this constant exposure something we should solely worry about?
Or is there like a healthy balance? One source mentioned healthy homeostasis.
Yes, that concept suggests this constant interaction isn't inherently bad. It might even be necessary for, keeping our internal ecosystem in check. Maybe complete avoidance isn't really the aim or even possible.
Okay, so if we're always interacting with these things, how does that inform the precautions mentioned in your sources?
There's a lot on wellness. There was. One source laid out these individual and community wellness principles. What's really striking is the focus on personalized, community-driven strategies.
Yeah, less emphasis on sort of top-down global or government programs, more on family and local community.
Precisely. And very specific actions were suggested.
I remember those. Things like getting outside multiple times a day, even for just 20 minutes, sunshine.
Yep, and prioritizing good, solid sleep. Dark room, no electronics nearby, really basic stuff, but emphasize.
And understanding your own body, right?
Right.
Like keeping diaries, maybe getting tested for deficiencies,
Yeah.
vitamins, minerals.
To create these really biospecific nutrition and wellness plans, it's very individualized.
And it's scaled up to the community level.
Right. Shared coaching, classes, teaching each other, physical interaction, building that local support.
And food, home gardening. Different methods mentioned like aeroponics, hydroponics.
Pot gardening, too, focusing on local needs, sharing non-GMO seeds, community gardening projects.
Even composting at home and as a community. And defending rights to gather, speak, travel. Building local strength.
It paints a picture of quite a self-reliant, community-focused approach to health.
And for when you actually get sick. Flu-like symptoms. The advice seemed pretty practical.
Very much so. Hot soups, multiple times a day, staying hydrated with tea, juice, focusing on fresh, nutritious food.
Using basic medicine if needed, Tylenol for fever, Robitussin for coughs, that sort of thing.
And crucially, community support, making sure sick people aren't alone. There were examples given, like,
The group chats for wellness coaching.
yeah, and the shared composting efforts. Real-world examples of community action.
The dietary advice also seemed consistent. Less sugar, flour, corn, more fruits, vegetables, those hot soups again.
Local, diverse nutrition. Plus encouraging movement, less screen time, more actual community interaction.
It's a very holistic view, which contrasts sharply with some other approaches, particularly around isolation. This was a big point of debate in the materials, wasn't it?
Absolutely. One source directly argues against isolation as a long-term strategy.
What was the reasoning there? Delaying exposure, maybe, but not preventing it.
That's part of it. The idea is you might slow the spread for a bit, but airborne or surface viruses still transmit eventually. Plus, the downsides are highlighted.
The economic costs, mental health issues, physical effects of being isolated.
Exactly. Significant negative impacts. And here's where it gets really interesting. The counter-argument.
That being together is actually better for building immunity.
That's the claim. Through sharing our biology, our microbes, leading to faster RNA replication and developing antibodies, building herd immunity naturally.
That's a fundamentally different perspective from isolate to protect.
It is. It questions whether delaying the inevitable is worth the potential harm of isolation itself.
And it links back to those wellness principles: sunshine for vitamin D, healthy diet, fresh air, as better ways to combat respiratory viruses than just staying indoors.
Right. The argument being that isolation can lead to its own health problems, depression, lack of movement.
And this view explicitly contrasted the WHO Fauci-Gates approach of isolation with this idea that humans build immunity naturally through interaction,
Yes, presenting it as opposing philosophies on how best to manage viral spread and health.
which flows right into the next big debate point: vaccines versus natural immunity.
And again, some very strong critical perspectives in your sources here.
Yeah, like the claim that some flu might be intentionally delivered in vaccines, and calling vaccines a random shot in the dark.
That viewpoint was definitely present. It characterizes vaccines developed by long-distance scientists in that way, suggesting they might not be precise or always beneficial.
And the core argument seems to be that a healthy body can usually fight off viruses on its own.
Right. It even mentions HIV, arguing exposure doesn't automatically mean disease, suggesting the immune system is often capable. The claim is that most people fight off viruses and recover naturally.
This is then contrasted quite starkly with figures like Fauci and Gates, Biopharma.
Alleging a pre-planned, simulated model of biowarfare, using vaccines for profit and control. That's a very serious claim presented in one source.
And it circles back to that idea. Together, we have increased immunity.
Emphasizing shared biology, herd immunity through natural interaction, rapid RNA replication, antibody development, positioning natural processes as superior.
So it's framing natural immunity gained through exposure as the primary, most effective defense.
That's the strong assertion in that part of the material, yes. Questioning the motives and effectiveness of mass vaccination campaigns compared to our inherent immune capabilities boosted by community living.
Okay, then the sources also touched on things that can weaken our response, regardless of the approach.
Yes, factors affecting immunity. Things like intentional misinformation, media generating fear, chronic stress,
All seen as detrimental to fighting off infections.
and lifestyle factors too, being sedentary, lack of social contact, exercise, the mental burden of uncertainty.
And there were even claims challenging the data itself.
Right. Arguments that there's no real evidence of increased flu deaths, claims of miscategorizing deaths, maybe financial incentives linked to COVID-19 diagnoses.
Leading to that term plandemic.
Exactly. Suggesting a potentially orchestrated event separate from actual viral threats aimed at pushing vaccines and a global biohealth agenda. It's important we state that's a specific viewpoint from the sources.
Absolutely. And the conclusion drawn there is that healthy people might not face a significant threat from common viruses, really.
And the overall message from that section seems to be a call for critical thinking, researching viruses, the immune response, understanding nutrition, food sources, global factors, taking a very proactive, questioning stance.
So bringing this all together,
Okay.
we've definitely taken a deep dive. We've seen this idea of constant interaction with microbes.
Almost like an ecosystem we live within.
Right. And then the different approaches to precautions, that very individual and community-focused wellness path.
Versus, say, large-scale interventions.
Then the whole isolation debate, does it help more than it harms? Or is being together key to immunity?
A central point of conflict in the materials.
And finally, these really contrasting views on vaccines versus the power of natural immunity developed through exposure.
It's clear the sources you gathered present a complex, sometimes contradictory landscape. There's no single easy answer presented across the board.
No, definitely not. It highlights these ongoing debates about health, responsibility, community, and how we navigate this microbial world.
Different philosophies, really, about risk, health, and society.
Which leads us to that final thought for you, the listener. After exploring all these perspectives, the wellness focus, the critiques, the arguments for community, the questions about vaccines and isolation, what does your personal approach to health and community look like now? How do you find that balance between taking care of yourself and being part of a collective in this world full of microbes?
Definitely something to reflect on.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.